and welcome to Legacy Keepers podcast. Your host, Kare and Anita, here, talking to you about all things to do with, I don't know, aging and writing our memoirs. Today's topic is an interesting one that I recently experienced, and that is kind of grieving losses, but specifically grieving the loss of our dreams as we age. So, yeah, like I would say a couple years ago, I don't know if you all have dream boards. Care, do you have a dream board?
I don't.
Or a list of a bucket list things?
I do not.
Well, for me, one of the things on my bucket list, well, I used to work in adventure travel, so I traveled a lot, but one of the things I always wanted to do was hike the Inca Trail in Peru, and it's a fairly difficult hike. But I'd been to Peru several times, but never had the time to hike the trail. And so in 2019, my husband and I were decided to do a trip to Peru, and we were going to Machu Picchu, and we decided to do this hike called the Lares Trail hike, which is a fairly difficult hike. But you know how in your mind, when you're like out on the lawn, you're like, I can do a cartwheel because when you were a kid, you did cartwheels all the time, and then you do it, and it just doesn't look like what you thought it should look like.
Their legs are all like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went and we spent a year preparing for it, doing hikes every weekend and everything. And we got there and the first thing that hit us of course is the altitude sickness. But because Cusco is like 9,000 feet above sea level, but we had planned to have a few days there so that we could acclimatize and we headed out to the trail. And the first day, my husband just got hit so hard with altitude sickness. And even me, like you think you do a hard hike here in BC, but there because of the altitude, it feels 10 times harder. And by
Yeah.
the end of the first day, we realized we're not, we're never going to make it. And there was part of me that was fine with that because at this age, did I really even want to put my body through this
Yes.
grueling hike, sleeping in tents in the snow and all this kind of thing? But because it had been implanted in my mind all these years that that was something I wanted to do, I realized, when we had to turn around, that I had to grieve that loss. And it
Yes.
wasn't even the loss of the hike that day, it was the loss of the dream
Yes.
that it had been on my bucket list. Why didn't I do it when I was in my 20s or 30s? Why did I wait
hmm
so long? And maybe that's a lesson for me too, is when you want to do something, try and do it because we don't know what's going to happen as we age, right?
You make a good point, and you asking that question about, do I have a vision board? Do I have a bucket list? Probably I should go back and do that. I mean, actually, Randy and I sat down. That's my husband, for people who don't know. We sat down a couple of years ago and we did make sort of a list of all the things we were interested in. And at the
Mhm.
time, it was more because we were looking to expand our social circle and just try new things, right? Because we were bored.
Right.
And we did make that list, and I should probably go back and find it just to remind myself what was important to me at that time, and are those things still important to me. I will say I totally understand what you're saying about grieving that loss of dreams, because that's a reality. But I do think to some degree there's two things going on. Are we really um, grieving a loss of a dream that we hold true to ourselves, or are we grieving, or are we dealing with FOMO, which is that fear of missing out? Because in this digital age, right, let's be
Yeah.
honest, and that's where, when it gets me, Anita, is when I see people traveling all over the place or having fun, going out and being social and having fun and all these big parties and events. I see all of that and I want to be part of that, even though in the moment they may have sent me a message and said, "Hey, want to come out with us tonight?" And I'm like, "No, I don't feel like I'm in my jammies. I'm staying home."
Yeah.
And then afterwards,
Yeah.
I'm like, "I should have gone." So knowing what is truly important to us as individuals, I think is really important, so that we then don't spend our time, effort, and money
Yeah.
doing things that really don't hold true to ourselves, right? Because
Well, and that is so true because once I kind of got through that grief of that
yeah,
lost dream, instead of just kind of staying in that, I was like, well, what do I want to do? So I shifted to, okay, well, there's other things I want to do. Like we still went to Machu Picchu on the bus and on the
Yeah.
train, which is a super fantastic experience.
Okay. Awesome.
So there's still things, but I had to reevaluate, I guess, because there's some
Yeah.
things that just have carried forward on my bucket list.
Hmm.
And I hadn't reevaluated along the way. And so that kind of reminded me, okay, look at that list again. And I can't say I even have a specific list somewhere. It's more in my head that,
Yes.
at one
Yes.
point I did have pictures cut out and a board, and I had this type of car on there. And now I'm like, I don't care if I ever have that car. So
Yeah.
I'm just removing it, right? And making
Yeah.
room then for new things to come in.
Um, yeah, I think the one of the issues is it still something I want to do today, right?
Exactly.
And you said something earlier about doing things when you're young. So those are a couple of things that come into play a lot here.
Hmm.
Because when we were 20, we had interests, we had dreams, we had physical ability. But
Hmm.
you know what we didn't have then? We didn't have money.
Yeah.
And then now that we're so much older, maybe we have more money, but do we have the physical ability? Do we even have the interest?
Yes.
And so what comes to mind for me, and I think this is why evaluating it as an ongoing basis and making sure that you're adjusting as you go, because maybe what you wanted to do when you were 20 is not what you want to do when you're 60 or 70. Um, it's like what I've noticed is that I have always loved travel. I love to explore new places.
Hmm.
I'm kind of like what I call an urban traveler. I love to be like exploring in the city. I love the museums. I love the galleries. I love the nightlife. I love the shopping. I want to go to different restaurants. I want to people watch in the squares and at the fountains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love the nature too, but if I had to choose between, a beach vacation, a hiking vacation, a cruise, whatever, a city vacation, I would choose the city with the option to do other things if I wanted to. And why I'm bringing that up is to say that as I've gotten older, there's a couple of things. My body doesn't have the ability to continue to push myself in the way that it once did. So now, after 2 hours of walking around a city, I'm exhausted. I used to be able to go all day. I could be
Yeah.
at a museum for the entire day looking at all of the different exhibitions and displays. Now, after 2 hours, I'm like, I need a bench. The bench.
Well, and for me, that's why I like nature because I can walk a lot longer on a dirt path than on cement, like walking around
Yeah.
the city or standing in a stores or whatever. There's something about now walking on cement that is harder on my body than walking in nature. So,
Well, and that makes sense because there's no cushioning and it is
yeah,
harder. But I
yeah.
had a conversation with somebody the other day, um, who was saying that this is going to be their last winter as a Mexican snowbird, and next year they're going to Asia because they've done Mexico for
Mm,
like 20 years now, and now they're going to go to Thailand and whatever. And I said to them, yeah, you know what? I would have done that even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. I probably would have done that. I would have done a tour, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, India was always of interest to me. But I'm like, you know what? I'm to the point now where my digestive system lets me know that no, it needs a toilet, and I don't do the little squatty potties that people are always saying are in half of Asia. And I don't care if it's better for my body. I'm realizing that I want a little bit more luxury than I used to
yeah.
be able to handle. I want a nicer hotel. I want a nicer bathroom. I want a flush toilet. I do want to go to some of those touristy restaurants because they're just cleaner. I don't do street food. And I'm just like, that's part of it. So in some way, I'm like, oh, I wish I had done more of those things when I was young
Hmm.
because I would have been more adventuresome and I would have been I was open to anything. But now that I'm like getting close to 60, I'm just like, no, my idea of adventure is a cruise.
But at the same time, like I don't want to give up on, oh, I'm just getting older, so I won't do this anymore. Like there's part of me that's still like, especially when you see, and again, it's on social media, so how much of it is true or whatever, but
Yeah.
there's some people that I know personally that are even doing bodybuilding in their, and they're the same age as me, or
Yeah.
not bodybuilding, but those events where you're in a bathing suit and whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they're not giving up on themselves. And so, and I'm not saying changing our dreams is giving up on ourselves. I think if we discover that one of those dreams is truly still applicable, then we work towards it. And that also keeps us young, right? Like, and I don't
Yes.
mean just physical difficulties. It could be lots of different things. It could be moving away from family. Like,
Yes.
it's just not settling. I guess for me, I don't want to settle. And
Yeah.
I want to also be realistic about what I actually want now and what my body can do now.
And I think that's the issue. I think we just need to listen to ourselves and not get
Yeah.
caught up in, what other people's bucket lists are or what other people's dreams are, or even in what our dreams were from in the past.
Hmm.
I'm one of these people that when I hear people say they have no regrets in life, I'm like, you're either lying or you're lying. But maybe there's actually people who have found a way to like not have regrets. And that's just not me because
Right.
then again, I'm a realist and I'm super open and vulnerable. And I'm also very self aware. So I know that I have regrets because I can look back at my past and say, when I faced that fork in the road and I chose that pathway instead of that pathway, I wish I'd chosen that other pathway. And here's a
Hmm.
case in point where, when I was a young woman, I wanted to be a model and an actress. And that was really important to me in that day. And I actually had an opportunity to work with a modeling agency, but I talked myself out of it because I was too scared and I just didn't have the confidence in who I was at the time.
Hmm.
And now, all these years later, I regret being too scared to see that through. But does
Yeah.
that mean I would pursue that today? No,
But and
not interested at all. So my expectations of myself and my desire have changed, but that doesn't mean I don't regret choosing a different path then.
right. And I think some people might say it's because of that lesson. The next time an opportunity came up, I chose, like, I just went for it and I didn't let my fear stop me, right? So they
Yeah.
could say
Yeah.
that's why I don't regret it because it taught me. And then in the future, I didn't make that mistake again. So, like, who knows? But I agree with you. There's definitely things I would choose differently if I could do
Well,
it again.
and I think too that, I mean, obviously, our listeners are, seniors and retirees and people in middle age who are thinking about, what's the next part of their life going to be like and what is the legacy that they have to share with others, what wisdom and whatever. And I think honestly that especially when thinking about like writing a memoir and journaling or writing your story down in a way that other people might read, we tend to think I have to keep this positive, I have to be enlightened, I have to like share my story in a way that lifts people up. And I don't believe that that's always true. I think that
Mm.
when we do have loss, we should share loss. I
Yeah.
believe that when we do have regrets, we should share those regrets. I believe that there's just as much value in saying this was really hard and it nearly killed me, you know, as it is to say oh, I had all these great experiences in life and look how wonderful everything turned out. I think that we do need to be open and honest and vulnerable, even when we can look back and say, ah, gosh darn, I didn't do that right. Do you know what I mean?
I totally agree. And
Yeah.
when I had that loss, I'll say, of my dream board items, it took me by surprise because it was the first time in my life that it hit me that way. And
Yeah.
so, if I had had people around me that had expressed that prior, I would have been prepared for it. Or maybe like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. But
Yeah.
as we age, we aren't always knowing what's coming or how we're going to feel about what's coming. And
Yeah.
so I would have loved to have heard other people's stories around the idea of grieving, the loss of dreams, because we often talk about
Yeah.
grieving the loss of people or loved ones
People.
or other things, but not the loss of dreams. And so 100% agree. I think writing about it is super important, and also writing about then what comes out on the other side, right? Because
Yeah.
if we have lost, but we did survive it, we did find something new out of it, or, you know, we're on the other side after the loss is over, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Great conversation today.
I know it like, man, there's just so many things about aging and loss. I have to say, like every time I'm on the phone with my parents, who it's like
Mhm.
who died this week, right? So
Well, and that's a
loss,
topic for another day, but
it
yes,
totally is.
yes.
It totally is. Well, it's Karen and Anita reminding you to keep your legacy alive. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.